So now we have the basics of our game. Our sprite, our rope moves, but when it hits the edge, we don't know who wins. So we're going to build a scoring system that tells if it's player 1 or player 2 that wins. Now, of course, we're going to be adding some scores, so we have to make a variable for the scores. So player 1 score, and of course we're going to initialize that to 0 again. And we need one for player 2 as well. So player 2 score. And we're going to set that one to 0. I'm just going to move these to the side. Don't really need to change much about them. But now we need to actually check when that light, that LED, gets to the left-hand side. Now if we hover over it, it'll give us the coordinates. So we can see that 0, 2, so x equals 0, it's on the left-hand side. So x equals 0. Logic. We have to do some comparisons. We have to check if our game sprite, so we can go here, there it is, so if our sprite's x equals 0. So go back to logic again, and there's our equals. And we don't want sprite, we want to be our rope. So here, if our rope's x is at 0, so it's right here on our screen, we're going to increase, we're going to assign a value to, we're going to increase the value of score. So we go to our variables, and we're going to change it by 1. Now, we're not seeing anything there. You don't see the score. So we're going to go our basic, and every time they get a point, we're going to show the number. And that number is our variables for player 1 score. Notice how every time I do some code, I'm testing it. Does it actually work? So here, in this case, well, it's not. And that's because I've got the typo where I'm adding the score to player number 2. And that's why testing is really important. Right, so now let's try it again. When it's on the left-hand side, there we go, we got 1, 2, 3. As long as it's on the left-hand side, it's going to keep racking up those points. So that is an error that we're going to tackle later. Now, though, we know that we need to fix it, but we're going to go and we're going to add in that right-hand side. So if you hover over, you'll see the x position. At this point, it's 4. So we're going to do the same thing. So I'm actually just going to copy that if statement again. So this time I'm going to be changing player 2 score, and it's making sure I'm showing player 2 score as well, except it's not 0, it's 4. So now we have an if statement, one for the left-hand side, one for the right-hand side. So if I test that, there's a score for player number 1, and there, when it hits that edge, it should, oh, you see I've got another error, and that's why you want to test it. I put this if statement inside that. So it'd only be checking if player X, if the sprite's X equals 4, if it's inside that loop. So it would never actually be true. So here, let's try that again. We'll test my code. There we go. Now it's equaling 1. There we go. So the next thing we need to do, of course, is get it back to that center whenever they score a point. So if we go to our game, we can see there should be a set block. There we go. So if they've earned a point, we're going to set it back to 2. And we're going to do that same thing for the player number 2. So now, you'll see, when you go to the side, now restarts back to that center.